Today we are going to be testing out something new from, that's right, PXG. We have the new range of drivers for 2026, the Lightning drivers. So we've got the Lightning Mid Tour or Tour Mid. We also have the Lightning Tour, and we also have the Lightning Max 10K, which is a 10.5 degree head, which we've dialed down to 9 degree, and all of the heads. Let's test them all out and compare them and show you what is the difference between each head. Right, I'm going to start off with the Lightning Max 10K. As I've mentioned, this is a 10.5 degree head. I've dialed that down to 9 degrees because you can change it by 1.5 to match the other head, so it will slightly open the face up. We've got it in a Tensai 65 gram extra stiff in the Tensai white shaft. This is the most comparable to the shaft I'm using at the moment. Just want to reiterate that none of these drivers are fit for me. This is just straight out the bag to my knowledge what would probably be the best fit for me, so I do need to dial it in. I'm also going to be using PXG golf ball to try and match it all up. It's the PXG Tour X, or Extreme Tour X as they call it. I'm going to take 3 shots from each drive and let's look at the results afterwards. Right, so first reactions on this is it actually looks like a really nice looking driver. Looking down at it, it doesn't look too elongated like some of the other drivers from other brands. And I could quite easily game this from the look of it. Yeah, so it's really nice. The underneath of the driver also looks super clean. I've never, ever, ever actually hit a PXG driver, so this is a first for me. So let's see how it goes. See, I thought I'd missed that miles right. It actually felt really nice. It felt solid off the face. Wasn't the best swing I could put on it. The most horrendous results. A little bit spinny, but I would expect that with this head a little bit. That's way out the hill. Be interesting to see how this one does. We'll take this one out of the results, just because I want to hit 3 similar ones. Yeah, spins up a little bit on the miss hits. It's a very interesting sound off the face. It's quite like a tinny sound, I would say. It's the best way to describe it. Not quite sure if I like the sound of it, if I'm honest, but that's just personal opinion. It feels solid, it sounds a bit tinny, I would say. Okay, that's the best hit so far. And that actually made a different noise. Yeah, that was good. Feels solid, to be fair. So that's 3 done with the Lightning Max 10K. Let's move on to the next driver and see how that performs. Right, next up we've got the Lightning Tour Mid, which I'm assuming will be sort of comparable to the Max models of other brands. Again, looking down at the driver, looks pretty similar to the 10K, to be honest. Probably sits a little bit more open naturally, but another really good looking driver. I think the Max 10K was probably a little bit too spinny for me to get the most out of it. So let's hit 3 with this and see how we get on. Be interesting to see how that one does, because that was slightly hillside. That's done really well, actually. Slightly different sound to the 10K. I prefer the sound of this one, and that's actually come out quite good. It's maybe a little bit on the spinny side, which I would expect from this head over the Tour head, but it was slight heel side, which made the spin go up. That felt more towards the middle. Nice hit. Definitely prefer this head to the first head. It definitely is a head which I would have thought would suit me more than the first head. Right, that was high toe. Quite a forgiving driver this actually, because there was one that I hit off the middle, slightly turned over. But that's 3 shots out of 3. Sort of haven't had consistent strike in them, and all 3 have actually been pretty good results. So we're going to keep those 3 in, and we're going to move on to the Tour head, and then we'll see the results side by side. Right, we are now on to the Tour head, which I would think will probably be best suited for me, knowing that I've been in a lower spinning head in the past, and also I do tend to prefer the slightly smaller looking head. So looking down at it, it doesn't look that different to the other two. It's a little bit more compact, which I do prefer, but again, a really good looking driver. And the underneath of it looks pretty similar to the other two as well. Again, this is in 9 degrees as a standard, so it will sit how it's meant to sit. It does have 3 weight ports, 2 at the front and 1 at the back, so I assume that you can move this around, but we are just going straight in. Right, let's see how we get on with this. Looking at the previous driver, I actually really enjoyed hitting that. That was really nice from the outset, and the spin rate was much better. But let's see how we get on with this. That was not a good swing. Very different noise. It was really loud. That was just a very bad golf swing on that. But it's always important to look at the figures. And with how bad that was, it was still only 2/8 spin. Definitely sits a bit more open than the other two, this, which probably doesn't suit me, as the right miss is generally my common miss. Well, that's a low spinner dipper out the sky. I would have gone away, but I can definitely tell the forgiveness of this driver is nowhere near the same as the previous, because that was just a tiny bit high toe and that's fallen out the sky there. Might have to hit a few here to get 3 in the table to count. That felt really good, to be fair. Heel side if anything, but not far off the middle. That was nice. When you hit this one, it goes. It's just if you're a tiny bit off on strike, you definitely get punished more than the other models, and I would say more than some of the other brands' lower spinning head. So we've got 1 that's going to count. And also, the ball does tend to fall off the tee more with this driver, which is always a downside. Yeah, I felt that was left. I mean, numbers-wise, it's definitely more optimal. It just doesn't quite have the forgiveness there. So we're going to hit a few more, see if we can get 3 good ones in there. Wasn't the best strike, but it's a better direction. Right, we're going to do 1 more. We'll take that one, I think. Right, guys, we've now hit 3 that we're going to take as the data points. Let's see how they all compare and look into the numbers. Before we go into the data, first of all, my first experience hitting a PXG driver, and I have to admit, pretty impressed. The first one, the 10K, probably never going to be for me anyway, and very forgiving. I was just not a fan of the sound of it, but that's just my personal opinion. For me, actually hitting each driver, I would say the mid-tour was the one which I felt the best and sounded the best. Result-wise, I think the tour head in terms of spin rates was probably a bit better, but it was just didn't have the forgiveness there. All in all, a really good range of drivers, and you can definitely tell the difference between the 3. Now let's look into the numbers. So let's look at ball speed first. So the Lightning 10K Max, which was obviously the most forgiving head, that came in exactly the same ball speed as the mid-tour, 153.3, with the standard tour head, the highest ball speed, which I've found to be the case across all the brands I've tested so far. The lower spinning, more tour head, which has actually got generally the less CC, has been coming out the most amount of ball speed. So the tour head there comes in at 157 average ball speed. Launch angles are pretty similar. I'd say the mid-tour is actually coming out a little bit higher launching. But then when we go into the spin rates, this is an interesting thing to look at, because I actually thought the standard tour head was coming out lower spinning and more forward. However, when we look at the spin rates are actually pretty comparable. And in fact, the tour head comes out a tiny bit higher spinning at 2464. As I thought, the max 10k head is coming out a little bit too high spinning, just under 3000. But then if we look at the total carry distance, the max 10k coming in at 261, the spin rates and the lower ball speed there has killed that really for me. And the mid tour 272 total with 272 total carry with a 287 total distance. And then the PXG standard tour head 277 carry with 292 total distance. Obviously the tour head is coming out the highest in distance. However, the forgiveness just wasn't quite there for me. Obviously I can tinker around with shafts and settings and things, but I think the overall forgiveness with the mid tour was better, and I could try and dial that distance in a bit better, basing it on different shafts or different settings. Looking at the trajectory, they were pretty comparable, the mid tour and tour. I would say actually the mid tour was coming out a bit nicer for me, and obviously the overall dispersion was a lot better with that. Overall, really impressed with these series of drivers. It would be good to do another video comparing one of these models to my current gamer, the QI35. So if you do want to see that, let me know down in the comments. Also, let me know down in the comments any other videos, any other testing, any other reviews you want to see. If you haven't already checked out my Callaway and TaylorMade reviews, head on over to my channel or in the description below, and I'll link those there. But without further ado, guys, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.